Week 13 in the NFL, Philly's big win in big 2 months, how they've fixed almost everything in Philadelphia. What another loss means for Baltimore. Pittsburgh's big day. Taking a look at Kirk Cousins and Matt Eberflus out in Chicago. I've got my college football top 12, but Todd McShay is going to stop by, and we're going to talk about his thoughts on how Ryan Day probably can't come back to Columbus. That seems crazy to me. We'll take a look at Texas, some of the SEC arguments for the last team in, if there even is an argument, a little Miami. So a lot of different stuff that we're going to do with that. Van Lathan stops by pre-life advice. So we still have a shorter life advice, but Van Lathan hung out with Kyle. I don't know. We just wanted to recap it. Week 11. Let's run through it. Let's start in Baltimore. Philadelphia with the win. They're now 10-2. They've won 8 straight games. They're the 2 seed in the NFC. They've now done something statistically that almost seems impossible in today's NFL. They've surpassed the Ravens. They're the number 1 rushing offense in the entire league. And they're the number 2 defense in opponents' yards per play. Let's review. When they went to the Super Bowl, they were number 1 in that category. So that meant they gave up the least yards per play of any team in the NFL the year they went to the Super Bowl. They were 25th last year. They have fixed it, whether it's coaching. I think the depth and the draft picks coming along, because it's clearly a difference. They lose Brandon Graham with a triceps injury. Blankenship left last night's game. Quinyon Mitchell left. You could tell that it was the kind of thing that just probably hurt, where he got hit on his leg and then came back into the game. But the draft picks on defense are making a huge difference. My guy, Nakobe Dean, is actually playing. Jalen Carter looks like he's going to be the game wrecker that everyone projected that he would be when he came out of the draft, and obviously fell for a bunch of reasons. And then Cooper Jean, look, between Jokic, Luka, now we got this corner. The Southie text threads are on fire right now. A.J. Brown, another number for you. When he plays, the Eagles never lose. At least not this season. He's been in 9 games, and the Eagles are 9-0. If there's a Super Bowl tier of teams, if you allow me to tier here for a second, I think it's clearly Detroit, Kansas City, Buffalo, and Philly. And then I do think there's a line to those next teams. Jalen Hurts completed 11 passes yesterday, and they beat the Baltimore Ravens at their place. And it was a tough game. I think Philadelphia went over an hour and 10 minutes of real time without a first down. But then when you factor in all of Baltimore's issues, which I'm going to get to right now, it's still a game that Philadelphia's they can have that much of an offensive drought in a game against that kind of opponent on the road and still get out of there with the win. And they're the hottest team in the NFL. I think it's a good reclamation's not the right word. I guess redemption, but it feels a little too basic for this. But there's just a redemptive arc of this entire Philadelphia thing of Super Bowl appearance. Same team comes back. Great record, but we feel kind of weird about them last year. Then they lose a bunch of games. They lose to Tampa in the playoffs. The offseason stuff with Sirianni, it's all connected. The new coordinator's like, there's no way he's going to make it to this season. They lose to Tampa Bay. It's bad. It's bad. And now it's really good for 2 straight months. Let's talk about Baltimore a little bit. So if there was a tier 1, tier 2 thing, I've probably had Baltimore in tier 1 the entire time. I don't know if I can do it anymore at 8-5. Pittsburgh's in it. Some would have Pittsburgh in tier 1. Totally understand. We'll get to them. Minnesota, Green Bay. That's fine. But I just feel like it's kind of those 4 teams where you feel really, really good about it, even if Kansas City finds just new ways to win every single week. So Baltimore's 8-5. They're the 6th seed in the AFC today. The defense, I was banging the table going, don't worry about this pass defense. Don't worry about these numbers, because look at the quarterbacks they've gone up against. Well, the numbers are still bad. And it's not even because of Hurts yesterday throwing the football. They were number 2 in that opposing yards per play stuff that I was talking about, right? With Philadelphia, their defense was number 2 in that. I just think it basically cuts through a lot of nonsense and tells you who's great and who isn't. This year, the Ravens are 18th in opposing yards per play, right? They're 25th against the third down. They're 31st against the pass. So as bad as all of that is on a defense that you just pencil in, like the real thing used to be, okay, the special teams and defense are going to be really good. I think it was fair at times to go, is there a way to beat Lamar that we've seen in the playoffs? But then he wins another MVP last year. He would still be my MVP this year, which I'll get to here in a second. But Lamar is doing everything, and the other pieces aren't carrying their weight. Like, carrying their weight would be a compliment to what those units are doing right now for Baltimore. Tucker misses 2 more field goals yesterday and an extra point. He's 4-9 field goal attempts, 50 plus. He's a 89% career field goal guy. He's 70% this season. The deep ones, this is a carryover from last year, 50 plus. He was 1 of 5. So when you combine what the defense is doing and what's happening here with Tucker, Lamar for this season in 24 is entering that Matthew Stafford, kind of Herbert with the Chargers, maybe even a little Matt Ryan at times, where it used to drive me crazy in the way we do anything, where everything's just wins and losses and all the quarterback stuff. So you turn on the TV, you watch shows on Monday. If the quarterback lost, he's not that good. If the quarterback wins, and then it's like the quarterback can do nothing. And some of those TV shows will be like, you know what? He just made the plays you needed to. And you're like, actually, it had nothing to do with it. They had like 14 points on defense. In this case, Lamar is more impressive than he's ever been because he's not even coming close to getting that kind of support. Now, Mike Sando, who we love, we have on all the time. He has a bunch of things that he uses and tracks, and there's this quarterback betrayal index where if you have great quarterback play, considering like what this quarterback brings to you every single week, and then subtract whatever the defense is doing or not doing in this case, same with special teams, back to Tucker. Like, the gap for Lamar is like all-time stuff right now. The support that he's getting between special teams and defense is 29th in the NFL. And yet he has been, I'm not saying he is the best QB in the world the way we do it with basketball, but he's having the best season. Have you gone and looked at his 3 interceptions for this year? Go back and look at those. They're like all not his fault. And I'm not even saying like he was great yesterday. Sure, I think you can find a couple throws here or there that you'd like to have back. Clearly, this shell coverage stuff that Philly was doing, I think we were also seeing it in the game. I don't know if Pittsburgh was doing the exact same thing, but just looking downfield and trying to find these throws. And you've got Aguilar dropping balls. Zay's obviously their most consistent guy. Andrews is like been back in a big way now. And I know that Bateman was down, but Lamar is doing more than you would need in a Baltimore team because it's just so well run. You're like, they would never be that bad collectively in the other areas of football, and they just have been now. And, you know, we're talking about 13 games of results. I don't know what to do with the kicker. The crazy thing with a kicker like Tucker is you could talk about the history, what he means to the franchise, and how automatic this guy has been. But with kickers, if somebody's this bad and costing you, I don't know if you can say the 7 points absolutely cost them the game, but then Baltimore's not going for it in 4th and 8 with 4+ minutes left in their own side of the field. The Pittsburgh game definitely feels like, you know, that's one Baltimore's leaving going, we should have had this one. So we can go through the games individually and say, what was the record supposed to do? You know, sometimes you can get a little too generous with that, and it can be misleading because the defense, again, has also been such a disappointment. But the way I look at it right now with kickers is Tucker can have all the history in the world, but there's probably a guy right now not kicking somewhere that's a safer bet than he is. And I don't know how you go into the playoffs with him. Okay, Pittsburgh, as I talked about the tierish part of this, why did I not have Pittsburgh in as a team? Now, if you pick them to win the AFC, I think that's a bit of a stretch with what's in front of them. We saw Buffalo just dismantle a San Francisco team that, by the way, did you see that number on the defensive starters? 3 people that were named starters in the Super Bowl against Kansas City on the defensive side of the football, 3 started last night's game. So the 11 guys that started in the Super Bowl, 3 started last night. And our guy, Fred Warner, was limping around a little bit. McCaffrey, the knee injury. I mean, it's just a mess. And San Francisco fell apart in the snow last night. All right. So if you were picking Pittsburgh to get past Kansas City, past Buffalo, I'm not there yet. And I would probably pick Baltimore in a rematch in the playoffs if that's what happened, because I don't know if they can win a shootout. However, yesterday they won a shootout, an absolute shootout with Cincinnati. 21-21, 20 minutes into this game. It looked like it was going to be like the best game of the entire weekend. Pittsburgh giving up those 21 points in 20 minutes just doesn't happen. They've only given up 20 points in 4 games total this season. but they're playing Cincinnati's defense. I cannot imagine what it's like to be in the quarterback room with the offensive coordinator and prepping a game against Cincinnati's defense, where I guess you would just tell your quarterback, hey, here's the deal. Here's what they do. Every time you drop back, there will be someone open. Throw it to that guy because it's a free-for-all. So basically the game's over on the second Burrow fumble. Nick Herbig, another one, by the way, Pittsburgh just has another edge guy that is stepping up big, second-year kid out of Wisconsin. Russell Wilson throws for 414 yards in this, the most he's thrown in a game in 7 years. So can Pittsburgh win a shootout? They did yesterday. And Wilson, I was really watching him in some of the drives and the difference between when he screws around and when he gets the ball out immediately. There's a difference. Like if you can get him, and granted, it's great doing it up against Cincinnati's defense, which I don't quite understand how they're this bad. Maybe it's the lack of pass rush outside of Hendrickson, because I still feel like there's guys in the back end that I like from them, but maybe I'm just wrong about it. So Wilson, ball out quick, his accuracy on those throws, no freelancing, no letting Russ cook stuff. It works. And then bringing Pickens in where there's just more deep ball trust, which might be the only thing I would trust George Pickens with, was a deep ball throw. There's just a lot to like about where it's been. However, let's hit the cue, Wargon.
Stats to impress people.
This isn't even a stat to impress the people. This is a chart to impress even more people. There was a chart that was out today that was basically talking about quarterbacks excelling at creating plays outside of the pocket. So basically the definition of it was, once the original call is over, beyond the first read, and now it's freestyle time. Wilson's the worst quarterback in the NFL based on this chart doing it. And the frequency with which he wants to still do it is higher than a lot of quarterbacks, and no one is less productive than he is. I mean, Will Levis is ahead of him for this. So I don't know if he still wants to do it. That chart would tell you that he wants to do it. He didn't have to do it yesterday. He can't run the football anymore. 20 carries, 27 yards. But if it is within the first or second read, the deep ball gambles, which I'm totally fine with, but if it's all the quick, accurate stuff, he's really good at it. And he had a lot of throws yesterday where it was snap the ball, get the ball out, move the chains, keep it moving. But I still don't think I'd pick him to win the AFC. Okay. This is an award for Kurt Warner, who I'm afraid to talk about quarterbacks. We've talked about how Jeff Schwartz, like if you mention something about O-line, you're like, uh-oh, is he going to get me on this? Did I have the protection wrong? Kurt Warner for quarterbacks, like, I'm worried. Like, oh, I can't believe against cover 2 you would do that. It's like, dude, that's not cover 2. That's you're just like, damn it, I tried. I even watched the all 22. I tried. Well, this is I hope Kurt Warner doesn't get mad at me award, because I watched a good chunk of the Atlanta game yesterday, went back and watched Kirk Cousins' picks. I don't think he has it physically. And they showed a breakdown of like the mechanics of his throws earlier this year before the Achilles injury, coming back from that, which is to be understood, versus throws at Minnesota. I thought Minnesota Kirk in that final year is the best I've ever felt about him. He clearly, if you've been listening to this pod, is not my favorite quarterback of all time. Still think the contract, like, I kind of get it. Quarterbacks, franchises, a lot like relationships where you're like, man, I just keep getting treated like shit. I'm just going to date somebody nice. I don't even care if I'm attracted to him. I'd like her to not steal my stuff. I think that's what happens with quarterbacks. You're like, all right, this is way too expensive. And he's coming off an Achilles, and we know the limitations, but it's better than what we've been doing down here. So if you look at the picks, though, they're really alarming. The first one, he double pumps, but throws it into coverage. It's always a bad sign when the interception is picked off by a player facing the line of scrimmage, like coming back to face it. And you're just, it's like center field a little bit. The second pick was the pick 6. I don't know if it's the route by one where it's this weird double move and he's never turned around. But if you watch that throw, Cousins gets nothing on that throw. And it's not a deep shot. I mean, it's kind of one of those torque throws where you're going across the field, so you got to get it out there. There's nothing on that pick 6. 17-3, it's 3rd and goal. They've got backed up at the Chargers 13. He throws a pop-up into the end zone into 3 guys. That's the worst of them. That's the one that I can't make. Like, we were doing the Russillo point assignment of interceptions. That's the one I would assign the most points to. And then the fourth one, it's 4th and 12. They had to have it. I don't blame him for that one. You got to get the ball out. And you could even talk, like, there was another throw, though, even at Drake London, who I don't know if he had the best game. There's some stuff where he may have cut off a route and hosed Cousins. There's another one where he drops on the right side. But the throw itself and the lack of velocity and how much it looks like he's trying to get into these throws, whatever, they're 6-6. They're the 4 seed. They could be the 3 seed because Seattle takes care of the Jets against an Aaron Rodgers who continues to just, he's not going to be the answer. That's not breaking news. He now has more interceptions this season than he has had in 11 other seasons in his career. Okay, the final thought on all of this is Eberflus is out in Chicago. I watched the game like a lot of you did, surrounded by loved ones on Thanksgiving Day. So Detroit beats him. We already know that. Caleb was 5 of 15 for 34 yards in the first half. Going into that disastrous last drive, he was 14 of 20, 208, 3 touchdowns, lit it up, back in. I think the Caleb headline for this year is you got to feel really good about everything you've seen from him, despite everything that's happened, and that Eberflus is not going to be there. I'm not a huge fire everybody guy. I hate the play calling Monday shit because a lot of you just do the same thing every single year with every single coordinator. Play calling. And a lot of times it's like, maybe your team just isn't that good and there's not some magical play caller who's going to come and solve it. However, the Bears convinced me in a bad way. Like, yeah, I think it is. I think it is the coaching. Eberflus had some weird moments this year with the challenges. I think he ended up 0 of 5. He had the 2 in the Houston game that didn't make any sense. And then there was like a game after that where then he didn't want to challenge because everybody's like, what are you doing in the Houston game? And then he challenged the Jordan Addison play, which was right in front of him. And then he said, well, I had to challenge it. It was explosive. It's like, well, or you don't use your challenge on it. So he had not built up a lot of equity with me paying attention to it. Again, back when I used to be a Bears fan and super locked into all this stuff. But if we go to the infamous play that'll no one's ever going to forget it. He's never going to forget it. I mean, that's going to be like a weird Eberflus moment into like what the rest of his career is, because everyone is watching this one game on Thanksgiving. They're watching you out there with your rookie quarterback. You get backed up on the penalty. He gets sacked. It's 3rd and 26. There's 36 seconds left. The clock now after the sack, under 30 seconds and running. They're likely not going to get the first down, but they're still close to field goal range. But they wanted to save the timeout to set up the field goal because they've had their own field goal issues this season with Santos. So I understand all of that. But as you're watching Caleb trying to get the play to everyone, and granted, the snap took too long. He was back there at like 13 seconds. And then this 13 seconds to 6 seconds moment is when Caleb probably deserves the most blame that you could give him. But I saw a lot of, well, it's actually more on Caleb. No, it's not. You want to blame Pyatt? We can blame Pyatt, but it's a really small slice of cheesecake. The rest of it is on the head coach. Can you imagine? Just picture it right now. Think of all the great coaches that, like, all the coaches that have been in the NFL, whether they're active or not coaching right now, but all the great ones that you can picture right now on the sideline, watching this fucking disaster happen right in front of them with a rookie quarterback and just going, I need the timeout for the field goal. You're watching it. I can't fathom the good coaches that I can think of right now and picturing just standing there going, whatever, like, we need it for the field goal. You call the timeout at 30. You don't want to. You're probably not getting the first down, so you can't like run up and clock it. I don't think you're going to convert the 3rd and 26, but you're going to have to say, hey, everybody knows what the play is. We're coming out. This is the play. Maybe give them 2 plays. At least there's now 30 seconds. And yeah, it's going to be a mad scramble to set up the field goal, which isn't ideal. But you know what's a lot less ideal is just watching 30 seconds run off. And then once the ball is snapped, Caleb has to throw it towards the end zone because it doesn't really matter anymore. Ball's incomplete. Ball lands. Game. I rarely, like if I were in local radio, I wouldn't want to be the guy being like, this guy has to be fired. Eberflus, there was no way he could be the head coach of this team this week. We're going to do a deeper dive with McShay, but I'm going to give you my college football rankings, my top 12. Again, the bracket will be different. We'll do that in the final week. All right, so Oregon, number 1. Texas, number 2. They beat A&M 17-7, but it was 461 yards to 248, 2 red zone turnovers. The 7 is only off of a pick 6. I thought this was a pretty dominant performance with some really costly mistakes from Texas. And I feel like Texas fell into the, well, if you're doing this to this team's schedule, why aren't you doing it to Texas? I don't understand why I took any shit for this. But if a team brings back the 3rd most returning starters in the SEC and their NFL quarterback and their coaching staff and a couple nice transfers, I'm going to think that team is good. I will think that team is forever good. I don't care where in the country that they play. But from a playoff to that, returning all of those people. So I just thought Texas felt a little bit like Justin Herbert. Like you watch Herbert, when you watch that Cincinnati game that we saw in primetime with Justin Herbert, and because the team would lose, I'm like, oh, I thought this guy was good. Like just so we're clear here, like you watch Texas all season and you think they're okay. You watch Justin Herbert this year and you're like, not this year because it's different, but all those years when he was putting up numbers and super talented and making throws like he did against Cincinnati, and you're like, so just so we're clear, you watch him and think, meh. I don't. And I don't with Texas. I have Georgia 3rd. They played Clemson, Bama, Texas, Ole Miss, Tennessee. 8 overtimes against Georgia Tech. Not great. It would have been nice if they put it on Georgia Tech to be more worthy of this number 3 ranking. Carson Beck for a half there was kind of a mess again. Tate Ratledge pulled him aside after a 3rd and whatever incompletion that went into the dirt. Tate like kind of grabbed him to be like, I don't know what he was saying to him. Again, I'm not buddies with him, so I'm never going to find out. But it's not ideal. But I think it's also not ideal to not reward a team for playing those 5 teams and ending up 10-2 and in the SEC title game. All right, Notre Dame. I could put them 2, but it's a little tougher for me to do it. I think I really like them. You could say they have 4 ranked wins: Navy, Army, Louisville, A&M. Only Army is still ranked. But I thought that USC game, like when Penn State went out there and won, I thought that was a tough afternoon of football, and they can just gash you. Notre Dame put 270 on the ground against SC, 7 yards per carry. Number 5, Penn State, they're 3rd in the AP. The committee likes them. And I don't think the committee cares about schedule that much. I mean, the committee had Miami ahead of Georgia yesterday. I might be entirely wrong because there's a lot of guys on Penn State I really like. So from a talent standpoint and watching Penn State enough, be like, oh, there's that guy. There's that guy. Like there's some dudes that I really like. And that's why the spread against Oregon's only -3.5. Tennessee at 6. I have Ohio State at 7. It has been 2 days and I cannot believe they lost that football game. We will discuss more with McShay. They're 7th in the AP, 8th in the coaches. They have SMU ahead of Ohio State. I think that might be reaching a little. I don't love SMU at 8, but, stop me if you've heard this before. This is another one of these schedule things that's really weird. They haven't played Clemson yet. They will now. Miami, Cuse, or even Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech with Haynes King's actually pretty good. Like that's in that tier of we're not allowed to say they're good because they have the losses. But when King plays, like that's a decent to good football team, well coached and a tough kid at quarterback. I have Arizona State 9, 3 ranked wins, but not really. Really what you want to focus on is ranked wins after the season. But even then, like everybody's just creating whatever they can to argue their side of it. Boise, 0 ranked wins. Don't love it. But they competed with Oregon, probably when Oregon was at its worst. But whatever. Like, what else am I supposed to do here? I guess I could do Indiana here. Others have. Indiana was 9th in the AP and the coaches. We'll get to Indiana. I've got South Carolina 11. I know it's 3 losses. And I have been since the Oklahoma game. I'm not going to argue Bama to be in. Others will. I would probably have Ole Miss over Bama, but I have South Carolina, even though the head-to-head with Ole Miss was a disaster. But I think I could do this, and if it's standings, that's fine. But if it's a committee of people talking things out and going, well, what about this? What about this? South Carolina's loss to LSU sucks because they were absolutely, I don't do the ref thing very often. They got screwed by the refs in that game. 3 different times. One of the worst officiated. They couldn't get the numbers right when they kept calling the penalties out. Like, it was Fowler and Herbstreit were just like, what's happening here today? So if you were in the room trying to go, who do we like? And look, the South Carolina Clemson game is a toss-up. Clemson position to kick a game-tying field goal ends up with an interception that's tipped. But I like Lenora Sellers better than I like Milroe. So I might even like them better than Jackson Dart. So number 12, I've got Indiana. Do I think they're one of the 12 best teams in college football? It's a massive I don't know. Now, I'll give them this. They've destroyed the teams they're supposed to beat. And there was no there shouldn't have been a letdown after the Ohio State game. But yeah, we've said it before. There's a lot of really weird schedule stuff that's happened this year with the expanded conference. The Power 4 spreads, nothing more than 3.5 points. Oregon is the biggest favorite, -3.5 against Penn State. Texas is -2.5. SMU is a 2.5-point favorite against Clemson. And Arizona State's a 2.5-point favorite against Iowa State, which tells you kind of like that is this year. You're like, I don't know. Let's see what happens. We've got Todd McShay, host of The McShay Show. It has been really good. I don't know if that means I thought it wasn't going to be great, but it's been even better than I thought, which then feels like a backwards compliment. Yeah, well, we're both from Minnesota, so we understand.
I had my concerns too, let's be honest.
Look, we have specific things that I want to get to. We're going to do just college because we're going to have so much NFL later on to close the season. So I just felt like there was so much to talk about with what's happened the last couple of weeks. So we're just going to do it again here. I cannot believe 48 hours, well, a little less, removed from Ohio State losing at home to Michigan. I cannot believe.
Wasn't that wild?
Game. Michigan throws for, 60-plus yards, 62 yards in that game. We can get into the missed kicks and all the stuff. And there was an interception off there for a little while. And the first 7 for Michigan is off that pick. But I can't believe after losing 3 in a row and watching Michigan all season being like they've gone through all the quarterbacks, they can't figure it out. No offense there. We can talk up rivalry too, hey, and that's certainly a factor in all this stuff and stuff we've seen the last couple of weeks. But my God, so you come out with a heater. You think Ryan Day is done?
Prior to Saturday, I thought it was all nonsensical noise, right? Like, look at his record, 47-1, I think it was, against all other Big Ten opponents, not named Michigan. What he's been able to build with this program, who he is as a coach. And you look at the last couple losses to Michigan, somewhat understandable losses, right? To really good Michigan football teams. But Saturday was different. And it just can't happen. It just can't happen. When you are clearly the better team, when you've raised the money for the $20 million roster or whatever it is, this is your year. It can't happen, okay? And so it becomes the kind of the tip of the iceberg. And it's kind of like a divorce, right? Like, both parties may be wonderful people. They may be wonderful parents, but they just don't work together anymore. That's kind of how I view this, right? And I'll say this, and you know how much respect I have for Ryan Day, my history going back to Richmond versus New Hampshire, Chip Kelly, how much respect I have for Chip. And we're both obviously, have personal relationships with Chip. But beyond that, and I'm able to look beyond that, as an offensive coordinator, you're not going to be able to find a better head coach, offensive coordinator, wide receiver coach combo than what Ohio State has right now. But I also understand this, and this is the most important part. Neither party is able to move forward together in a productive manner. That's, to me, the most important aspect of this. And that's why I mentioned a divorce. When you have 2 great people, 2 great parents, but they can't function any longer together. And that's Ohio State, the university, the community, the boosters can no longer function together with Ryan Day and his staff. And it's like the 14th biggest city in America, but it's a small bubble when it comes
Yeah.
to Columbus and Ohio State football. And with the noise, and I'm sure the absurd death threats and how it affects Ryan Day's family and all the pressures that go along with that position, Ryan Day no longer is able to function at the highest level that he can possibly function, remaining as the head coach of Ohio State. So when I come out and say, barring a national championship, I don't see how there's any chance that Ryan Day continues to be the head coach at Ohio State. I say it because I just don't think it can function any longer.
Look, a year ago when this stuff was happening after they lost to Michigan, 2 years ago, I think that Michigan loss of the previous three was the one I was like, how did they lose 2 years ago? Now that's completely trumped by what happened this weekend. And I had done a video, it was like, I felt like there were a lot of parallels where Harbaugh wasn't beating Ohio State in the beginning. They were actually a little closer, I think, than people were giving him credit for. They have the terrible COVID year, but Harbaugh brings all that attention upon himself. I think he dialed it down a little bit. My point was always like, why does everybody want Harbaugh fired? Like, if Michigan's totally fine with him, then that should be all we need to do. Like, what? And be careful what you wish for. And then the same stuff was happening with Ryan Day. This one's inexcusable, though.
It
Like
is.
this changes. I'm not saying fire Ryan Day today. Okay, they still have a chance to win a national championship. Okay, for Christ's sakes. So I'm not saying that, but now I'm far more willing to understand the frustration, which I think at times is like completely misguided to, I'm with Ohio State fans. Like, imagine Saturday going, how did it happen again? I don't understand. Like, look, I'm not play calling guy because I know there's a ton of stuff that's going on that I don't understand. But like Ryan Day got super pissed at Lou Holtz for saying that this wasn't a physical football team. The way they called plays last year on short yardage situations told you that they didn't love the way they blocked that stuff. And I know they're down the offensive lineman going to this matchup, but if you're down the offensive lineman, I didn't understand why there was a commitment to show that they could maybe push people around.
That was my biggest frustration.
That was Howard wasn't good. The pick is disastrous. The kick, I don't understand. And I'm saying this is like, because I don't understand it. Why was there such a commitment to be like, we're still going to ground and pound these guys, especially like that side of the field where they were dealing with the turnover?
I think it was an inability to accept that we're not going to win this by being more physical and shove it down their throat. I truly do. And you listen to every interview after games, it's always about the physicality and how Ryan Day is proud of how physical this team is. But they go out and they recruit all these Ferraris on the outside. And so like it's okay. It's okay to utilize those weapons. But for some reason, and I think it was just the mentality coming in that we're bigger, badder, stronger, more physical than Michigan this year. We have to not only beat them, we got to beat them at their own game.
But on the D line, if there's one thing that we knew about Michigan this year, it's that you're not. You're good everywhere else.
But I'm
not against them.
So you self-scout, right?
Yeah, right.
You self-scout and you look at Michigan and you say, all right, Will Johnson continues to not play. So their best cornerback is out. Our best player is Jeremiah Smith. And arguably our second best player is one of our other top 5-7 players in this team is Emeka Egbuka, the other wide receiver. And they, with 4 minutes left in the first half, they had a combined 4 targets. And so it clearly was this mentality inside that bubble that we are going to not only beat them, we're going to demoralize them and we're going to do it our way. And now I get it. Like, you brought in Will Howard because, you know, Chip's always, I remember asking Chip like 15 years ago, what, give me your, and I forget who their quarterback was at the time, but give me like your, what you're looking at a quarterback. Yeah. Give me the guy who like you would want. What are you looking for in the quarterback position? He said Rajon Rondo. You know, he's a Boston guy, and that was the Celtics point guard. He wants a mobile quarterback. He wants someone to distribute, and he wants that in his offense. And so they bring in Will Howard, and Will Howard has an element of that because of his good decision-making in the run game, his run ability, and they don't trust him as much as a passer as they do in operating their run game. They bring in Quinshon Judkins. They pair him up with Travion Henderson. This is going to be the year. But you go into game week preparation, you say, okay, we lost 2 week 1 starters on the offensive line. We're not the same group up front that we expected to be. And if Michigan has one, and I think they had one personnel advantage, especially with Colston Loveland also out at tight end, another first round. Michigan has 2 first round prospects on that team. 2. Well, no, that's a lie.
No, 55 is the first round.
Sorry. Yes, they're outside of the defensive tackles. And that's my point. Outside of the defensive tackles, they have 2 first round prospects, and neither were in the game. Okay? Loveland and Will Johnson are out. And so you sit there on Sunday of last week as you're game prepping, and I know the game prep has gone on all year, but you're looking at your personnel and you're looking at their personnel and you say, okay, Michigan's got one advantage in this game personnel-wise. Their defensive tackles against our beat-up offensive line. But they just continue to run their head into a brick wall. It didn't make sense to me.
It still doesn't make sense. I can't believe, it's one thing if they had won 3 in a row against them, took them lightly, go in, looking ahead, hey, and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, you lose 3 in a row to them. They win a national championship. You do all this stuff this summer. I think Jeremiah Smith might be the best player in college football. I mean, he is
could be
such a stud at receiver. And, look, if nothing else is working, I know this sounds stupid, but it's like, is it worth it throwing to him once every resetting of the downs? Just like, let's see. Because we're probably going to get a PI half the time anyway.
Screen, a vertical shot, whatever it is.
So after the game, and credit to Fox, by the way, for staying with the fight and all of the stuff, which led to the flag. And, sometimes you can see a network get out of something and it pisses you off. And I know what I would have to say if I were doing play-by-play. I'm never going to be a play-by-play guy, so I don't have to worry about it. You have to admonish it, there's no place, whatever. I'm entertained as shit. I love it. I love watching that stuff. I'm not saying it's right. Shouldn't happen after every game. Although I think these kids have so much hate going on as kind of semi-public figures, in some case massive public figures, that there's this release in a way because of how they're connected to so much shit talking, that I think that's some of what we're seeing. But then I saw a lot of just piling on Ohio State because they lose the football game, which I understand. But here's what I don't understand. If you're Jack Sawyer and those guys are going to do shit to your field because you lost, you're just supposed to let them do whatever you want. So him grabbing the field and then being criticized, grabbing the flag on the field, and then after that, like, I think there's a lot of people that were criticizing Ohio State no matter what happened. And if they had just let Michigan do this and throw this party and throw the flag into the ground over and over again, and then that would have been used against Ohio State too, to be like, these guys didn't even show any fight and being disrespected. So I know it's not.
We can't complain. We can't complain about NIL and transfer portal, and there's no loyalty to your college, and it's not like it used to be, and be the grumpy old man, right?
Yeah.
And then watch Jack Sawyer have so much pride that he's not going to allow that to happen on his field. Here's my greater issue in it. Did you watch Sark when Texas went to plant the flag? And I know it's different because Michigan is the one that planted the flag. But did you watch Sark, how quickly he picked up on that, how quickly he ran over to midfield, and how quickly he got his players away from midfield so a fight did not break out?
I did see it. And it was impressive that his kids listened to him that quickly. Like, they went to do it, and as soon as he ran over, it was like, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Like, everybody, not to say that, like, there'd be other coaches where 100 kids would be like, whatever, coach, I don't care. But I also think that Michigan, Ohio State thing's different than Texas.
I agree.
Even with the A&M history in Texas, because there's a ton of history, and I'm not being dismissed. The Michigan, Ohio State one is just really, really nasty.
I got it, but if you're Ryan Day, man, and I think part of the reason why Sark was so
it's Day's fault.
I'm not saying, but you just talked about Fox and the broadcast and how great of a job they did. They also did a great job, and part of it was luck, just the timing of it. But they happened to pan to Ryan Day at one point, and he looks at an assistant who's running by and says, "What happened?" Well, what happened was you guys were over by the band, getting ready to do what you unfortunately have to do even after a loss, and you sing the fight song or the team song, whatever it is.
Which has to be the worst time
in
college
athletics.
I was
as they were lining up, I'm like, they really got to do it now. But you see a bunch of your players, like the vast majority of your players, go racing over to midfield, and then you ask 5 minutes later, what happened? Like, what did you, and I get it. His world is crashing down. He's worried about his family, his future. I can't believe, like, he's absolutely in shock, like a traumatic shock, right? But at some point, you got to take, there's institutional control. Like, you're the captain of the ship, and so I don't know. And I'm not blaming it all on Day. I'm just saying it felt like
No, I get your
very
point.
unfortunate timing where he's saying what happened, and then you watch Sark like 8 hours later, and it's the same thing that's on the line. Sark is motivated by doing the right thing, but also highly motivated by the fact that, all right, if this happens, we're looking at suspensions if a fight breaks out, and that could affect us either in the SEC championship and or in the playoff. And for Ohio State, like, I don't know if there's going to be suspensions that are handed out, but if there are, it's not going to be in the Big Ten championship because they're not playing in it. It's going to be in the college football playoff.
Okay, I want to talk Texas a little bit because I think SEC Hardo and all of the SEC and the conference
love
stuff to me
Hardo.
is very political. No, but I just think it's all political. Like, no one's ever changing their mind, and the cost of eggs is going to be either something that's bad or good, and everybody's just going to be full of shit.
Yep.
So when Texas is coming to the SEC Hardo is like, oh, good luck lining up against these guys and all that kind of stuff. So that was stupid. You know, the SEC Hardo who doesn't think any of the bowl losses ever count because players declare for the draft, but then they'll run around like crazy when they beat the Big Ten in some of the matchups, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that stuff is really annoying. So I know that Texas fans had to do that. I think sane people looked at Texas going, oh, okay, they're probably going to be pretty good. And you could do a little of the scheduling stuff where there's 7 SEC teams that won 9 games this year. Texas is one of them. So you take the other 6 9-win SEC teams, Texas played 1. Like, again, Texas's SEC experience is not even close to what Georgia's was. But I thought that was a dominant win. I thought they were a good football team all season. But the other side, the anti-SEC Hardo, let's say that's the phrase, just to keep it simple here, would suggest that Texas coming into the SEC and winning it immediately is a knock on the SEC. And I thought, well, I guess if a new team comes into a conference and wins it in the first year, like, what does that say for the conference? Now, granted, the SEC is held up higher, so therefore it's held to a higher standard, so that maybe it's more damning there. Do you want to run through who won the other conferences off the top of your head?
Do I want to run through who won the other conference?
Who won the Big Ten?
Like in the regular season?
Yeah.
Oregon.
Right.
Okay.
Who won the Big 12 in the regular season?
Is it BYU?
It's Arizona State.
Oh, Arizona State. Yeah, Arizona State. Yeah, sorry.
The ACC. Do you know who won the ACC?
SMU.
SMU. 4 teams.
Mm-hmm.
All in their first year.
I never thought about that.
Yeah. So the counter would be, again, well, the SEC is the one everybody talks all this shit about. I just never really quite understood. I didn't watch Texas being like, yeah, they'll be bad. But I think weirdo SEC guy probably was in some prideful way. I don't have more on that. That was just a point.
No,
unless you have more.
It's actually a good point. I hadn't thought about it, and I didn't look at it universally in the other conferences. I do think, yeah, it's political. I get what you're saying, and I also think the same SEC Hardo who was saying, wait till Texas has to play this SEC schedule and they can't hold up week in and week out, is now saying, well, look at Texas. They're another great team in the SEC. and we're a deeper, better conference than everybody. So, yeah, I mean, it's always going to be pitched at that angle. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
I'm glad we touched on it.
Because SMU has a little scheduling thing going on here, too. Like SMU, I already mentioned it in the top 12 thing, but if you go through like the top ACC schools, they didn't. So sometimes I wonder, like, did we have a playoff result where it was like who had the easiest time in their now ridiculous, completely unfair schedules? But anyway, I love Notre Dame. I think I finally got there with it. I don't know that I'm picking them to win.
Because I was texting with Pollock yesterday, And I think he's in a similar boat. I think it's been hard to gauge how good Notre Dame is. I think they looked awesome early. They got a big win against A&M. Then it's like, oh gosh, it's not going to be a good year. Poor Marcus Freeman, like him, but is this going to work with the Northern Illinois loss? And then it feels like they've steadily gotten better and better as the season's progressed. My argument is, and it's not even an argument. I guess my trepidation with Notre Dame right now is when I look at them. 2 times they had to face opponents that had good weapons and a good passing game. I think maybe not just 2, but in 2 occasions, Louisville and USC. This secondary, which is really talented, but they lost Morrison, their first round cornerback.
Right.
Are they when they get into a playoff against a really good passing team? What's that going to look like? So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, can they pass rush at an elite level? When you start to look at Tennessee and Georgia and South Carolina, if they get in, and Ohio State to a lesser degree, but they have talent up front.
What about Oregon's pass rush?
Good. It's good, not elite, I would say.
Okay. I'm just trying to think of it like, do you like Oregon's pass rush still more than Notre Dame's, it sounds like?
Maybe slightly. I don't think there's a huge difference, but Penn State's got a better pass rush. I'm just saying, when you combine, okay, a couple times against really good passing teams, and maybe it's pass rush and secondary, together. And I think there's a lot of good talent in that secondary, but they've struggled. You can't deny that. They've given up a lot of yards. Okay. Now they had the 2 interceptions late and they stepped up when they needed to, but USC passed the ball very successfully. Right. And then the other thing is, on the flip side, the other side of the ball, the weapons concern me. Like, do they have explosive weapons on the outside? And the answer from every tape I've studied is no, they don't. And a quarterback who has gotten better as a passer this year in Riley Leonard, but they don't scare you on the perimeter. And I looked this past week, and their top 2 leaders in receiving are the tight end, Mitchell Evans, and Jeremiah Love, the running back. And so, while I think they're a very, very good football team, absolutely deserve to be where they are at this point, considering what they've gone through. And there's been carnage everywhere else, and they've continued to kind of gradually rise up. And I think they're capable of beating a lot of teams, not all teams, but how great are they? Because Pollock said he legitimately could see them winning a national championship. That's where I differ. I can go a long way in terms of how good they are, and I could see them winning a game, maybe 2 games. I don't know that they're a national championship team because of those 3 areas that I just touched on.
Yeah, I think I just love the O-line. I love the running backs, even though one of them went down.
The running backs are outstanding.
Yeah, and I think Riley Leonard's been really good, and then the running part of it, I think there's a toughness with them. I think the resume, like, again, it depends. It's back to the politics thing, like, however you want to shape it, which we're experts in. Like, I can see the bullshit as soon as it's posted, where it's like, well, when common opponents this or whatever, and like,
they have
you're gonna sit there
one win against a currently ranked opponent,
right? But you're going to see people
at 24.
You're going to see people pushing that they have 4, and it's just not going to be true. I just think I loved that in that game against SC when they needed to be physical. And I'm not even talking about the pick 6. Like, at that point, like, SC's trying to do whatever they can. So the score ends up making it a little, well, SC got a late one anyway. So it ends up looking, because it was a competitive football game. And I know the schedule part of it.
Terrible beat. Terrible.
You didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve that.
I mean, I gave it out to all my FanDuel friends. We're trying to take down FanDuel each and every week. We've been on a run. It's a 7.5 point number. They're down 7 covering, driving going in, and you give up. I want you to think about it. You're covering, and you got a chance now to go tie the game.
Yeah.
Or maybe win it if you go for 2. And all of a sudden, you throw 199 yards worth of 2 pick 6s in the last few minutes of the game. That's a bad beat.
I gave out Notre Dame. I needed it bad. So what are you going to do?
You feel good about that?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if
you do.
anybody should feel like should be running around. I needed one though. Look, the other thing with Notre Dame's offense and that O-line, they're the number one. They're actually number 2 in all of college football in yards per carry, but they're the number 1 if you include them as a power 4. I know they're independent, but like if you put them up there with all the other big boys, they're the best yards per carry, and it's by a fairly wide margin over Kansas State, who's number 2. And you're right. I'm not picking them to win a national championship. We could rip apart their schedule like I've ripped apart other teams' schedule. I'm arguing against the idea they have these 4 ranked wins because it's not really all that accurate. As you pointed out, Army's the only one there. And I definitely like Penn State's defensive talent, especially with the Morrison injury, more so than I like Notre Dame's defensive talent right now as well. I mean, look, there's a lot of Penn State games where I'll watch and be like, there's just a ton of dudes here that I do like.
Yeah.
I do like on this team. So it's been different maybe than some other Penn State years.
I'm excited to see that game.
Who would you pick? Penn State, Notre Dame right now.
Ooh. I think I've been unfairly hard on Penn State. I just don't think that they're at that class. I don't like when the.
No, but it doesn't sound like you think the Irish are either. It feels like a tier 2 situation for you.
Yes, yeah, they're both in that tier 2, and like maybe like 7, 8 spots down in terms of the teams I think that are better than them. Notre Dame, Penn State, I'm going to take Penn State slightly.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Penn State, even though I ranked them behind Notre Dame in my rankings, which probably doesn't make any sense. But there you go. The last SEC spot. It sounded like you were pushing for South Carolina. I put him in. The Ole Miss head-to-head thing is a tough one to get past. I do think it's okay at this point of the season when things are really, really close. If you just go, hey, guess what? I think this team is better. I like this team better. After the 12 games, I feel better about this. Lenore Sellers, the stuff he does, like, it's a little dangerous. It can get a little wild every now and then. But my God, and the way he'll get free from everybody, and then you think you have the angle on him. It's not Lamar stuff because there's still nothing ever like Lamar in college or even really the NFL. I don't know that I'll ever see anything like that again. But Lenoris will get this angle on you, and then he has this extra burst where now all of a sudden you're like, what the hell is going on top of the pass rush and everything else? Maybe South Carolina is kind of this underdoggy pick here. I would go South Carolina, Ole Miss, Alabama. I am so over the Milroe experience with Alabama that you will not hear me argue for them, even though it looks like the committee still likes them more.
Yeah, I guess I'm confused because I just assumed after the loss that Miami's out. But I
have them out.
I see Heather Dinich come on and be like, I don't know what everyone's talking like. Miami's still in. And I don't know how the hell, if you're the committee member, that you want to put that defense. Listen, I'm an NFL evaluator first and foremost. I'm dying to see Cam Ward. Yeah, baby. I'm dying to see Cam Ward against a college football playoff defense.
Sure,
it will help the evaluation. But I'm also a college football fan and want to see what's best, and I want to see the best 12 too. I can't live with I can't live with giving the Miami the honor of being in the college football playoff with that defense. That defense is atrocious.
They're so bad on defense.
They were up 21-0. You blink your eye like 2 quarters later, and they've given up 35 points. You almost have to try to do that.
I hated my guy Restrepo following too. I hated that because he's been one of my favorite players this year. I have no issue with Miami, but I think it's funny, and credit to Heather Dinich, because she got all sorts of shit when she was suggesting that, hey, this SEC team may not be out or a 3-loss. Like, all it was is we have to do a better job of, like, what this could look like at the end, and the stakes being raised these last couple weeks, where, I think it was kind of ridiculous, like during Michigan, Ohio State, when they're saying like everything's on the line. You're like, except it isn't, because Ohio State's still going to be in the playoff.
Right,
They're
but
going to lose to Michigan, and they're still going to be in the playoff. Now, what you tell me to shut up is that everybody's watching Georgia Tech in a game that nobody would be paying attention to with Georgia's 2 losses. So I kind of lose the argument on like the excitement part of it because there's more stuff that actually matters. I just think it's ridiculous in the years where it was LSU, Bama facing off against each other, meaning like this team, whoever wins this game, that team has a chance to play in the national championship. And if you lose, it is over. I like those stakes. I like the Michigan-Ohio State stakes being different. I don't like Ohio State losing and then being like, oh, whatever, 2 losses, doesn't matter. We're just back into the playoffs. So we've already heard that rant from me. But Dinich, I thought, got all sorts of heat for going like, hey, have an open mind about a couple of these different things. And now she's doing it with Miami when the same thing's happening with a different team in a different conference.
Here's my issue though. If Miami's out, then we have a great discussion. Alabama, South Carolina. I don't think it's Ole Miss, but some people will argue for Ole Miss. I don't think you can finish the season that way, have the losses that they had, and still get in. Okay. So for me, it was Alabama versus South Carolina. And I'll come back to that in a second because I'll make the argument for South Carolina. But I want you to understand, if Miami's still in, I think if my math is right, it's a moot point.
Yes.
Like Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Georgia, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Tennessee. Then you keep Miami in the mix. Then the winner of SMU, Clemson, is in as the ACC champion. Indiana apparently is still in. Like, in what world Indiana and Miami deserve to be in the college football playoff, and some of these other teams don't? But like, that's the world we're living in based off of last week's college football playoff rankings. We'll see what happens.
I have
on
Indiana
Tuesday night.
in over Miami. I had them 12th.
But it doesn't matter what you have. I have Miami out. I'd like to see Indiana out, but they're both getting in according to what the rankings were last week and what Dinich is now saying, and nobody has better insight into all of it. So those are the teams. That's 10 right there, okay? Then you got Boise State is going to be 11, or I guess UNLV is a possibility if they win that championship. Sure. And then the 12th spot will be the Big 12 champion, right?
Well, the way, again, I'm kind of going off of the AP, but like if you look back, I mean, the committee really liked Miami. They still had them in front of Georgia, which I think is so brutal. Like,
they
how
had them
could
at
you
6
look
and
at
Georgia 7 and Tennessee 8?
Yeah.
So I just laid it out for you. If Miami's in, there's no discussion about Alabama, South Carolina, or Ole Miss. There isn't. There's not enough room.
I don't know if Bama's going to win. Based on what the committee's been doing here, they're going to like Bama over South Carolina, and they're going to have the head-to-head to point to, and that's totally fine. And I'm ignoring
Bama has
head-to-head on both of it.
2-point win head-to-head over South Carolina. They also have one spot in the strength of ranking edge over South Carolina. In South Carolina's favor, though, they lost to Bama by only 2 points in Tuscaloosa in a game they were dogs, but 3 touchdown dogs, and that was 8 weeks ago, okay? They have the slight edge in strength of schedule. South Carolina does over Alabama. They have no ugly losses like Alabama does with Vandy, and more importantly, the blowout against Oklahoma. The LSU loss included terrible officiating that could have changed that game. And we forget that Sellers was injured in that game in the first half. And most importantly, South Carolina, we're trying to get in the best teams right now. South Carolina is the hotter team, has played better down the stretch, and 2 ranked opponents they've beaten in the last 3 weeks. So if Alabama gets in, it's because of the brand, period.
No, they'll say the head-to-head. They're going to say the head-to-head, and they're going to say that they don't Alabama. I mean, honestly, the Oklahoma loss.
But
is
even
worse.
like when you talk about like FanDuel and all these places in Las Vegas, you give 3 points. It's like it's under. You give 3 points for home field advantage. They lost by 2.
No, I understand. I am with you on South Carolina, and the fact that they had to go a little Robbie Ashford experiment during that LSU game should be even more credit towards South Carolina. But based on the way the rankings have been going, they're going to say Alabama won the head-to-head. And maybe they still like Miami enough. Miami being in over those SEC teams to me would be a joke. That's where I'll sound like an SEC apologist.
Miami doesn't have a win over a currently ranked opponent. I'm not asking for a response. It's just a fact.
the AP dropped him to 14. And when you start doing some of the strength of record and all that stuff, like Alabama's still number 4 in the ESPN FBI. I mean, give me a
Yeah, I don't know what that is. The FBI
I
can get
credit
out of here.
anybody for trying something a little different or whatever, but like Alabama was number 2 and then they dropped to 4. And you're like, so you're going to start citing some of these things? All right. Do you have early leans on the championship games? Can we make that quick without like a full breakdown? Because I know you're going to do a full breakdown on the McShay show.
It scares me that FanDuel's got only a 3.5 point spread. I'm not even talking personnel. Like, obviously, Oregon is the much better football team in my mind, and I think most.
You think it's just because it's an Indy?
I think it might be because it's an Indy. Because the whole, I'm guessing Penn State's going to be better represented.
The Ducks travel though, so it's
they
not
do,
like, you know.
But that, like, I was expecting 6.5, right? And 9 out of 10 times when the line's like, they're begging you. They're begging you.
Begging you to take the Ducks.
They're begging you to take the Ducks, right? So that game scares me.
Same exact thing. Like, I thought it'd be 6.5, maybe 6. And then I was like, God.
Mm-hmm.
What about the rematch? Is there a chance Georgia's just an awful matchup for Texas?
Yes. But I don't think you're going to see, 10 sacks, 15 tackles for loss, 4 turnovers. Like,
Ewers got a break in the game. You don't see that a lot. It wasn't that he was benched. We're like, we're just going to give you a break.
It was a mental health break. It truly was, if you want to break it down.
Like, if you want to have a cigarette, Quinn,
it was ahead. Like HR walked into his office and was like, listen, grab a cigarette. There's the couch. Take a mental health break. We'll come back to you in a day or two, and you'll resume your duties here in the corporation.
I don't. It's hard to watch that game and be like, yeah, I'll pick the other team this time. But Carson Beck continues. Like, if you want to make the argument against Georgia, be like, what are you actually backing? And I'm like, well, I'm backing that they went.
Let's not forget Carson Beck threw 3 picks in that game and was not very good. Carson Beck is a hell of a lot better, more confident.
You think so? I didn't think he was that great against Tech. Did you? I mean, I think he woke up.
I did. Second half, I thought he was really good. I thought he was really good.
First half, I was like, what is going on with this guy?
They're a team that they like to play one half of games. I can tell you that much.
Is there anything it takes you a while to recover?
I'm interested to see, do we see more of Arch in this game?
Yes.
Mensch on our show the other night made a really good point. Tim Tebow vibes when Arch comes in. Go back to that Chris Leak freshman year. There's a certain level of like energy, his mobility. I think we saw it in this Texas A&M game. I think we're going to see potentially a little bit more of him against Georgia, and designed, not like, because it could be because Ewers struggles. If he struggles again the second time around against Georgia, but I do think there's going to be a little bit more Arch in this game.
I would agree. I think you better bring it out and show it. And I think we already saw maybe the teasing part of it against A&M to have Georgia thinking about that. Do you have anything on Sam Levitt, the freshman? He's got a gold chain on in his profile pic on ESPN.com. So that's all I need to know.
You love the picks.
What do you mean?
I feel like I always see on your X feed, you're always like, you'll pop up some weird old pic of somebody.
Well, that's the Nakobe Dean fedora thing. Just try to because Nakobe Dean was the kind of guy who was like, he's not going to be good in the NFL because he's undersized, because he was probably one of my favorite college linebackers.
Took him a minute. I was nervous, but
it did take a bit. But I mean, he was just so good. But sometimes it's just size. But it looks like now things are going to work out for him. No, I feel like when it's Sunday night or Monday night football or Thursday night football, I know everything I need to know about a player's personality, the way they introduce themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've said this for years. Like, I can tell exactly. There's a reason why the old lineman
that guy would be everything.
Right. I mean, like, the more sauce you throw into that, the more difficult I think you would be as a roommate. But if you're a freshman at Arizona State, right?
You're not wrong.
If you're a kid out of Westland, Oregon, and you find a way to get a gold chain in your profile pick, like, how do I pick against you?
Yeah. He's been playing well.
Okay.
I like
What
that
about
Arizona
SMU
State
Clemson?
team. I can see Clemson winning that.
That was the only one spread wise where I felt like
What's the
if
number
you're
in that
getting
game?
Clemson, if you're getting Clemson plus 2.5, you kind of have to.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me
Yeah.
finish up here. That I know you're going to do a much bigger breakdown. We weren't going to do a full conference championship game breakdown here. I just was trying to get into McShay's head a little bit about the early leans. All right. Let's throw a scenario at you. Okay. Because I've seen this one out there on the internet,
Okay.
which is crazy. If you look at the standings right now in the NFL and you go league wide, there's a lot of work for the Bears to end up with the number 1 pick. They're 4-8. There's a bunch of teams with 2 wins. There's a handful of teams with 3 wins. Saints, Cincinnati. So it's not likely that the Bears, even though with a difficult, tough, redundant, difficult remaining straight in the schedule, it's not likely, even with all those things, they would end up with the number 1 pick. However, we don't have any rules here. If the Bears were to get the number 1 pick, Shedor's on the board, maybe it even means you get Dion. What would you do?
I don't think you're getting Dion. I would, depending on the information you have and everything that leads up to the draft, I'd probably draft him.
And
With
get
no
rid of Caleb?
intention of making Shedor my quarterback. I've got my guy. I would, and the difference in talent level and the future of those two is like, it's hard to overstate. Okay. I really like Shedor, best pure passer. Think he's got a chance to be a solid pro, but Caleb's got a chance to be special still. And we've seen a lot more glimpses in the last few weeks than we did earlier in the season. I draft him only because now I've got the leverage. Because Coach Prime is absolutely going to dictate where Shedor goes. No question in my mind. He's stated it. He's leaning into it. He's tripling down on it. And it will happen. So if I draft him at number 1, no matter if Chicago or Jacksonville or whoever it is, if I draft him at number 1, now I'm in control. Now I dictate not where he goes, but what the price is going to be. And if it's Chicago or any other team, I'm looking at this year's draft, and it's not like the last couple of years where there's a clear-cut top 5, top 7 players or clear. Like, you can get pretty close at pick 6 or 7 or 8, what you can get at number 1. And so I take him, trade to the team that Coach Prime has designated for Shedor. And now I'm going to get a boatload of picks because I have the leverage. And if you want him, you got to come and pay me to get him. That's what I would do.
I'll give Shedor this, man.
It's a better answer than you expected. Admit it.
I think I really wanted to break down like the idea that some people would be like, would Shedor be a better prospect than Caleb? And I can't fathom.
Well, I answered that.
Yeah, you were definitive that there's no one that does evaluation. Well, can't speak for everybody, right? I mean, somebody would maybe grade Shedor.
I haven't come across anyone who sees the same future for Shedor as they see for Caleb, and that's not even that big. It's not like a knock on Shedor necessarily. It's more of what everyone thinks that Caleb can become.
Yeah. And I would agree with that part of it. And another thing with Shedor, like, you want to talk about doing it on your own. They're still the 3rd worst rushing team in college football.
Oof.
Like, you never have to worry about it. And yet he's still putting up these numbers. And if it weren't for Travis Hunter, I think Shedor would have a much better chance at the Heisman. Like, maybe I agree. Maybe even the favorite.
He's been awesome this year. He really has been.
Look, I felt like the beginning of the year, I was saying the same stuff from last year. And I went, this isn't happening. And then they completely turned it around.
Yeah.
Completely turned it around. And they deserve a lot of credit for that. But I would agree with you. I think some of the theoretical kind of fun stuff of like, what if the Bears ended up with the number 1 pick? You take Shedor and then trade Caleb. And it's like, why would you want to get rid of Caleb after everything that you've seen him go through this year and how well he's played for really good stretches here in the second half of the season? All right. You can check out the McShay Show on Spotify, Ringer Podcasts, 3 days a week, Saturday night recaps. So you guys will be going all night then after all the conference championship games on Saturday, correct?
Yeah, right. Fired up.
Awesome.
I'll call you to see if you want to join again.
No, I'll jump in. I'll jump in on that one.
Ooh. All right. We got them locked in.
Spice it up. All right, let's go. Talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, my man.
Before we get to live advice, let's just say the community, there was, for those that care, there was an incident this weekend, which was positive. It was a positive, so let's not mislead. We've got Ceruti, we've got Kyle. We have Van Lathan, who we're always excited to have join us.
What's
and
up?
Kyle and Van had the Frolic Room hang that the internet could not stop talking about. So let's start with this. Kyle, how did it start? How did the rendezvous start?
It started at Thanksgiving. We actually, like, a couple weeks before this, I forget why Van was, we were watching football a couple weeks before that. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to Frolic Room. And then Bill kind of got a whiff of that. He was like, I'll go. It's like, all right, we'll see. And then I realized I had something to do that Saturday. And then I saw Van at Thanksgiving and he was like, concrete, we're doing this. I got a little nervous. I texted him the day of. I was like, big day. He was very responsive. I'm like, this is happening. And he showed up at 2:30. I showed up at 2, no big deal. And we stayed there until like 9:30. It was like a 7-hour hang.
Wow.
He bought the
7
whole place,
hours.
Wingstop. It was, I refilled my jukebox credits like 3 times. I probably spent like $60 on the jukebox, but it was all worth it. Priceless.
Okay, Van.
So let me tell you something. I had a fucking fantastic time at Frolic. I gotta be honest with you, okay? I will say something, Russillo, you were kind of like the abominable snowman of Frolic. Like people, there's rumors of you, but people aren't sure. Like, you know what I mean? Like Moby Dick type of situation. Sure. People aren't sure. There's rumors of you. When I sat down, I came in there, I sat down, and Kyle starts introducing me to all of the cast of characters. There was a white girl in there that started crying within 5 minutes of me sitting down. Tears.
She's got a hair pit trigger on her cry. Yeah.
About something that happened in the bar years ago. Nobody cared that she was crying. I was trying to console her, and everybody else.
I know. I was trying to tell you, man.
Kyle's like, she cries. Don't worry about it. The bartender was like, fuck you. And everybody was like, she's crying. Then the gigantic Boston bouncer comes in and starts sprouting like pro-Trump stuff at me. I'm like, bro, not today. Have some wings. He goes and he eats the wings, and then we're all together. And let me tell you about, real quick, the diaspora at Frolic. I met a Nigerian person, an Asian dude, regular whites, Southie Boston people, LA-born African Americans. Everybody was there, and everybody was just getting drunk and watching the game. I met another guy, the USC dude, that I talked to. Yeah. I'm going back. Me and Kyle left, we were so fucked up. I'm going back. I had fun at Frolic. Frolic is my new haunt, right? I've got a haunt. I've never had a haunt before. You know what I'm saying? Baton Rouge, you have a haunt, and then it gets shot up. But here, I don't think that's gonna happen at Frolic. But like at Frolic, it was dope. I had a fun time, Ryan. What's your hesitation?
It's not that I don't love dive bars, because I love them. It's just our schedules don't always align. And like Saturday is a perfect day. Like there's no way I could 2:00. I mean, just
Indiana,
it's not
Purdue.
gonna happen. I mean, it doesn't happen at 2:00 down the street from me, you know? So yeah. I'm a bit, if it's going to happen, it's usually very, very late for me. I'll be like, all right, it's on. I mean, the one time I was in that end of town, I think I was in like a part of Koreatown, and it's one of my favorite dive bars in LA up there. And then I just hit it, Kyle up. I go, hey, I'm in the area, Frolic Room right now. I'll go. And then Kyle's just like, dude, what are you, 11:00? Like, what are you, nuts? So
11 a.m. maybe.
Yeah. So I was just like, it's not going to happen.
Well,
so yeah, we
went to St. Shane Gillis afterwards, and Bill, I don't know whose idea was. It was Bill's or Ryan. We're like, should we go to the Frolic Room? And I think it was like 10:30. You could feel the vibe shifts in there as the sun went down. It's just different, right? Like,
it wasn't the same.
You would have been fine, Van, with Frolic if we showed up at 7:30. It's been dark for 2 hours, but there was just nothing like that 2:00. It's still bright outside. I just didn't want his first impression to be, the shift change. You don't get Troy or anything. You get the guys in the bow ties. It's just different.
I'll tell you one thing about Kyle that I realized about Frolic as well. There's another reason why Kyle wants people to come to Frolic. Kyle is the mayor of Frolic.
No.
Don't bullshit the people. Like Kyle,
I'm not even on the wall. I'm not even on the wall.
Kyle everything was revolving around Kyle. Kyle was connecting everyone. People were coming in. They were paying homage to Kyle. Like they would walk by, but they would come and stop. Like, you ever see one of those old mob movies where you walk in Vito's club and let me go say hello to Vito real quick. And like people were coming in and they were saying, "What's up" to Kyle, and then going to the end of the bar. This is kind of a situation where Kyle is the man. I understand why he wants people to come. I had a great time though. I ended up having like deep conversations about my dad. We once I get drunk, I become everybody's friend. I'm like one of those drunks. I was around meeting new people. I might have got a real estate agent out of it.
You got G-checked by a cowboy guy, didn't you? A little bit. I think you came out of it okay, but he was like, "What's the fucking story here?"
Yeah, he tried to come over to me and ask me about the cowboy hat. There is a part where you're in a bar, and there's a little thing in the back of your mind. It's like, don't get fucked up in the Frolic Room. All right.
Yeah, but like, this guy's like, well, I'm from Utah. Like, I'm a real cowboy.
Yeah, and I'm like,
living in LA at the Frolic Room. All right.
Right.
Thanks,
but,
Rick.
I get that the hat is controversial. So it's like, whatever. But I had a fun time. Bottom line, Frolic, if I was going to give it out of the 10, I'm going to give it 9.5 out of 10. The only reason why it's not a 10 is because they ain't got no food. But I had to provide the food. But I really had a fun time at the Frolic Room.
Much easier place to work with no food service, though. So I think Frolic Room deserves even more credit for that, for not pretending to like, all right, we're going to do food. So I saw a pic. Was that Blade your trainer, Kyle?
No,
pictures that you posted?
No, Blade's a white guy from Vermont, or fuck, I always get those wherever he's from up there. I think it's Maine. No, that was that's my trainer. That's the Nigerian guy he was talking about. That guy actually got fired because he just wouldn't show up to work on time and he would just constantly lie about it. But then another bouncer was in the hospital just kind of getting old stuff. So they brought him back for the night shift. So I never thought I was going to see him again because I'm really not there after the shift change. But, me and Van were in for the long haul. Chance. So it was like, 5 hours into the hang. I was like, oh my God, it's you. And then we hung out.
Van, what's the beverage of choice at the Frolic Room? What were we drinking?
We were on the old fashions, baby. We were on the old fashions. And let me tell you something about the Frolic Room. They do not care about over serving you.
Heavy
they
pours.
look over, they look over and they see you don't have an old fashioned. And the next old fashioned is in front of your Troy is on. You want another one?
Dangerous.
You want another one? I said, Troy, this is my
you say
fourth
yes twice,
one.
he stops asking.
Yeah, I'm like, this is my, because he came over and he put it there. I was like, hey, bro, can I have some water? This is like, I was like, can I have some water? Just give me one glass of water. Just one glass of water, because I got a woman to go back home to, and she's already been warned, by the way, about the Frolic Room. It was a deep conversation from Kyle's girl to my girl about the Frolic Room. So she was like, don't come back here all fucked up. And I did anyway. But it was a lot of fun. Old fashions were the drink.
Can I give you a little fun fact? I paid her both of our tabs before we left just so we get out of there clean. You want to guess what it cost for both of us to drink for 7 hours there?
I had like 6 and a beer. So I'm going to say, what, like 100, 150 bucks?
It was 98. I thought you were going to say a lot more. But it was mine and yours, so I don't know. I was getting beers the whole time, so I don't.
Kyle, do you get a discount for bringing people in? I feel like you need to get some kickback here.
It's not really said, and I don't really want to put it out there. I don't want like Bar Rescue John Taffer showing up and being like, we're gonna fucking gut this place.
I don't want Taffer anywhere close to that place.
Yeah. So yeah, me neither. I would just change everything. Yeah, I don't know. Different times, sometimes
we're gonna do pretzel rods like Canes, like the guys in the 20s. Buckets of pretzel rods. As soon as you watch it, what says Hollywood more than pretzel rods?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Really wanted to capture the soul of this town.
I know we don't have a ton of time, so I want to ask Ryan one thing. Because me and Kyle talked about it, either
Yeah.
You're coming up there, or this Saturday we're coming to you. Or whatever. We had a whole conversation about what's going to happen with this. Are you coming to Frolic, Ryan, or are we gonna have to come all the way down to Manhattan Beach? Like what's the deal here,
Road
bro?
dogs.
The Manhattan Beach parties apparently are not well reviewed on Yelp. So
I like them.
I this has to be where I come to Kyle. I have to come. This is not me reversing it and be like, hey, why don't we actually do it at my place? Because we've already tried that. I have to come up, but
I'd go back.
It's going to be, the problem is
good review for me.
Redemption.
There's always like a last second thing with me. There's never like, oh, I'm going to be going out next Thursday. My life doesn't work that way. It's a last second thing. And then you guys are conveniently leaving out. Like when you go early to the Frolic Room, do you know how long that would take for me to get there? It'd be an hour. It would be an hour.
Russillo, let me tell you something. Okay? A lot of people recently have tried to drive a wedge between me and Russillo. It's never going to happen. All right? So just let's stop it. It's Crockett and Tubbs. It's Riggs and Murtaugh. It's never going to happen. Yeah. People have been trying to drive a wedge. It's never going to happen. Okay? Whatever. I agree on everything.
I'm aware.
We're together. I'll put it to you like this. You're coming to the Frolic Room, and there's not going to be any last second. Not only are you coming to the Frolic Room, I want old Russillo. I want New England, drunk, WWE, fucking give me another one. Give me another beer. I want you to drop your, you know how like in Departed where like Mark Wahlberg is talking to the guy and he's like, on the weekends, you're dropping your eyes and you're hanging out with drop your eyes on the weekend. Give me another beer. Fire it up in fucking Southie or whatever. The guys from Southie, the bouncers from Southie, you come in there, we're going fucking crazy in the Frolic Room. Everyone's coming. We're going crazy. I'm going to be the new mayor. It's time that a black politician wants something. So I'm going to be the new mayor of Frolic Room. So I'm coming in there. And Russillo, you got to come in there, man.
I'm in. We'll set a date. We'll figure it out. We will not, it'll happen. Only if we promise there's dancing after. Van, you're the best.
Unexpected. Yeah.
Thank you.
Love you guys. Love you guys. All right. Prayers for Ryan Day. I got to go.
You want details? Fine. I drive a Ferrari, 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
Okay, thanks to Van for stopping by. Again, our email address is lifeadvicerr@gmail.com. Life advice begins now. Okay, I think we had a couple. Yeah, this feedback one is too intense. What's up, guys? 5'10", 165, NBA comp, Matthew Dellavedova, not the game 3 of the 2015 finals version, but close. My buddy and I want to come clean about a few things. TJ was right. You can use his real name because he said you could call me Alex, which is my real name. So I guess we're real naming each other here. I do that stupid joke of asking if he minds if my buddy can meet up with us for a drink, however. So this is the Tickle Monster emailing us.
Okay.
Ceruti is correct. Being a wrestler, you often get too comfortable with physical contact. Being a smaller guy, you frequently get targeted in the wrestling room with unwanted attacks. Imagine he meant wrestling like locker room with unwanted attacks. Russillo is also correct that guys become way too comfortable being in their natural state. When introduced with this uncomfortable and disturbing joke, I also hated it. But like the saying goes, hurt people hurt people. It is not how I wanted to become known to Ryan, who I've listened to since the SVP days, but I'll take it. My buddy will be retired from TJ's life going forward. And it's not necessarily for him to ask random strangers to tickle him to build up a tolerance. Oh, okay. And he says, as a former Montanan, I'll see you at the Garden Bar. I'd like to get a shift at the Garden Bar. Maybe pick up bottles for 7 days. So this is the Tickle Monster, I guess. Is that what I'm led to believe then here?
Yeah, it sounds like it. So he just needed someone to say it loud enough, and he was like, yeah, you're right. I'm going to change my whole shit.
I guess I'm a little confused.
This is the biggest help we've ever been.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where when you kind of
Perhaps.
say it out
Yeah.
loud and let other people figure out what you're doing, it's like, yeah, that is kind of weird. Actually, maybe I should stop doing that.
Figure out what you're up to.
Yeah. Yeah. When you hear people that don't know you talk about it, because no one was listening to that email going, I
That
think it's
guy's
cool.
awesome.
Those
Have you
guys
asked the
tickle
tickler
hell
how
out
he
of
feels
each
Can
about
I
other.
hang out with that
Come
guy?
on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, hey, I was listening to that Russillo pod the other day. The hoop stuff gets a little long, but they do this life advice at the end. And one of the guys in the friend group just tickles the shit out of the other guys. Like,
Hell
what do you
yeah.
think if we started doing that? Okay. This is a longer email, but man, it's good just because it's well written, although it's not like, oh my God, I've never heard of this scenario before. Jim Stats, 5'10", 185, just started lifting again at age 26. Recently hit dumbbell bench press with 45 pounds, 4x8. I'm telling you right now, if there's anything in you, this is when the strength starts to happen. A couple years, but just keep going. A couple months ago, I went and saw a movie with my roommate,
I just saw it.
Twisters. Review of Twisters. Glenn Powell is cool. Did
I
you
like the
like
original
this
better,
review?
but I do love Glenn Powell.
Dude's his approval rating. He's like Anthony Edwards at the end of last
You
year.
do no wrong.
You know, because like I told everybody, Ant has really nowhere to go, but kind of down on the love fest for him. Glenn Powell, I'm worried. You know? All right. Anyway, movie theater's packed. To the left of me sat my roommate. To the right was some guy who was the subject of this email. The dude appeared to be anywhere from 15 to 19 years old. And to his right sat a girl about his age and his mom and dad. Not sure if the girl sitting to the right of him was his sister or not. Before the movie started, the guy sitting to my right asked me if I wanted to get any of the snacks that his mom packed at home and snuck into the movie. I kindly accepted a small Ziploc baggie of popcorn. I thanked the guy. A couple minutes go by, and the guy looks my way just enough to get my attention to ask if I wanted any of the puppy chow that his mom brought, to which I kindly declined.
Is that like a nickname for
Yeah, it's like chocolate
trail mix or something?
just a bunch of different chocolate things, I think. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe
All right.
some Chex Mix in there.
Okay. I didn't know that. So think because I didn't realize they called it puppy chow. I've noticed my own shopping. I never have snacks. It's been pointed out.
You don't
That
seem
makes
like
sense.
a snacker.
Checks out.
Yep.
You're a very
it couldn't-
deliberate eater, I feel like. An efficient and deliberate eater.
Just
Yeah.
stacks of chicken breasts in the
You like
freezer.
good food. It's not like you don't like good food.
The
It's
other
just
night
that,
I
like I don't
cooked-
think you're like, hey man, like I'm,
No.
I have a pack of like Biscoff cookies in the, in the pantry.
No. And whenever I do buy any of that stuff, it just Ceruti, you know how much you hate waste. I don't even want to tell you. So yeah, I didn't know what that stuff was called. All right. So I kindly declined. A couple minutes go by and the guy asks me, do you think this movie will be good? At this point, I'm thinking that this guy's just being nice, and I generally did appreciate the offer of snacks. This is also the most by far that I've ever spoken to a stranger in a movie theater. But again, nothing seems weird at this point. The movie ends. The guy looks over at me and asks what I thought of the movie. I've never had a stranger immediately ask my opinion on a movie, but considering our exchange before the movie started, I wasn't perturbed by the question. After sharing my opinion, the movie was pretty good. The guy asked me, what are your hobbies? I finally have that uncomfortable feeling that you get when a conversation with a stranger has reared into an unforeseeable direction. I come up with some quick bullshit response, such as, quote, hanging with friends or watching sports. And I hope that my short response and slight change of tone would signal that I'm now done with the conversation. Didn't work. Then the guy asked, quote, do you like skateboarding or fishing? At this point, I'm wishing a tornado would just rip through the
Like,
building
which
and suck
one?
me away.
Which one do you
Yeah,
like?
you can only like one.
Which one are we doing on Saturday?
I wish the tornado would rip through the building and suck me away. Again, give a short answer. I double down on using a tone that would suggest an uneasiness, saying something to the effect of, I don't mind fishing. Then the guy suggests that we should hang out sometime and then asks for my phone number. Now I'm full-blown panicking. Quickly, I try to understand his intentions. Either he's just an overly kind guy who's oddly comfortable in attempting to strike up a friendship with a stranger,
Or it's the
or he
cable
has
guy.
or he has romantic intentions. I don't know. At that age. Again, I'm not trying to make any assumptions about it, but I don't know. I mean, if he's sitting there with his parents and then maybe a sister or whatever, I don't know. Not sure if it could really be anything other than those two options. I'm not attracted to men and not not attracted to men who may or may not be teenagers. Also, in a matter of seconds, I try to brainstorm brainstorm responses. I obviously don't want to give this guy my number, regardless of what his true intentions were. I don't know how much time I would need to spend with someone before I'd feel comfortable going fishing with just that person. But the answer is a lot of time. Not to mention, I'm potentially 10 years older than this guy, and I look like I'm at least 26, if not older. So there's no way this guy mistook me for being around his age. I'm a nice guy, and I don't like making people feel bad. The guilt I know I would feel if I told this guy sorry, but I'm not giving you my number overpowers me. And I say, quote, sure, I'll give you my number. I start reading my digits, and about halfway through, I think to myself, what in the actual fuck are you doing? I panic again and quickly make up my mind that the safest way out of this is to give a fake phone number. I give the guy my real number until it came to the final digit, and I changed it. I smiled, got up, and left. The way I handled this exchange stayed with me for days, and I know I took the coward's way out. I've attempted to justify my actions by telling myself that this guy was going to be disappointed to learn that I didn't want to ever see him again. But this way, his disappointment could come at a later date once realizing I gave him a fake number, as opposed to feeling that disappointment in the middle of a packed theater next to his family. I'm interested to hear all of your takes on how you would have handled this. Am I a piece of shit for giving a fake number as opposed to just being honest? If you're asking why I didn't immediately get up after the movie ended, the theater was packed. Our conversation was silent enough. All right. So longer one there. I'm going to offer up something that may not, like, he might just be, maybe he's the friendliest teenager of all time. He could also
have
like
a special classroom. You know what I mean? Just doesn't take cues.
There could be a touch of something going on where his social cues are off a little bit. Which unfortunately, I always think of, like, teenagers not having friends, it just sucks. That could have been it. But that's not your responsibility. You know what I mean, man? Like, it's not your kid. So for you to be beating yourself up here, the fake number thing, I get it. It's just an easier way than saying, women been doing it for decades. Unless, you never know, though, because if, like, the kid's remembering birthdays and stuff, he may try every single number combination on your ass. And in a week from now, you're getting a text asking you to go fishing. So I think you handled it fine. You don't need to, I can't even believe you let it go that far personally, but that may be something to replay in your head, which is not always the easiest thing to understand. And I can't imagine why wasn't a parent jumping in there a little bit sooner going,
leave him alone.
Hey, why are you talking to the 26-year-old? Or leave, or I don't know, maybe they were psyched he was meeting someone.
Yeah, so they're like, please take him on Saturday.
Yeah, this kid loves to fish and skateboard, but you can only do one.
I only get one day off a week. I can't do another fishing trip. Come on. I don't know. I look at it, I'm a normalized no guy. I would look at this as training. The stakes are kind of low. Like, I think I would have had a nice way out of this that doesn't really hurt anyone's feelings. Maybe it would, but it wouldn't sound bad coming out. Like, I would just be like, oh yeah, I don't give out my number. Like, almost like it's a telemarketer or something. Like, that's what I would try. I haven't really tried that one yet, but it popped into my head and it was like, man, if I was in that situation, that's what I would do. So, like, I look for these little situations that I didn't force, but they're just coming my way. And I'm like, this is a good chance to see if I can do a couple more reps on the old squat rack or whatever. It's just like, can I get this one out? I understand that if it comes across your mind that maybe this guy's got a developmental thing, maybe not the best time to test that out. But he wasn't thinking that. So if I wasn't thinking that either, I would have tried something like that. Just like, oh yeah, no, actually, I don't really give out my number. But
yeah, once again, it's rough out there for dudes finding friends. This is a little bleak, but I think it's you were too nice at the beginning, and I know that sucks because, like, if you were just more of an asshole at the beginning, didn't want snacks, or if he asked you the fishing versus skateboarding thing, just say I don't like either. It probably ends the conversation. But you were being too nice, and you kind of dug yourself too deep of a hole.
I don't know.
Maybe he just keeps shooting shots. He's like, all right, which one? What do you like? Basketball? Yeah, like
blinders.
He just starts firing different activities until you say yes.
I just. You know what I loved? Because I don't know what I'm doing lately, but every now and then I'll say something in a setting where I'm by myself, and I asked, like, I shouldn't even admit this, but like, it'll just be such a sign that you're getting older, where I was getting a sandwich and the girl said, do you want a drink? And I'm usually like, I never get a soda or anything like that. And so I'll usually just be like, can I get a cup for water? But then I was kind of feeling myself. I was like, maybe I'll get a soda water. And I was like, what are the cup options? And she was like, we only have one cup. I was like, that's pretty efficient. and was like waiting for, and she just was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I'm actually regretting even telling any of this story right now. So the point is this. I kind of want to go to a movie theater by myself and turn to a stranger and be like, you think this is going to be any good?
That one I like though. Like that, I feel like that's probably what used to happen.
You think so?
Did that ever used to happen? I'm talking like the 80s when it just wasn't like everyone wasn't a weirdo. Kids played outside. Like, was that a thing? I mean, even the previews, like the previews end and you're like, I'm not going to see that one. Like maybe you don't turn to the stranger next to you, but like, isn't it sort of like what do you think? I don't know.
Opening credits, I think to be like, hey,
what do you think,
buddy?
Excited? Yeah, I know. I get it.
Think this will be good?
You know what sucks too is
hilarious.
As a guy who,
like, I think that
as a guy who's like a solo movie, like that's my thing. I love it. It is just like the most peaceful thing I could do, really. And if somebody like kind of came and screwed that up, and it would just bum me out. Like it would ruin my whole experience, and I would be mad about it. I don't think I would have been nice to this guy to be. So I can't really relate because like that's my safe space. Like if I'm going to see Twisters by myself, I've got a big ass bowl of popcorn. I've got a giant soda. I don't want to talk to anybody. Like I don't want to talk to anybody. Me being there alone signals that I don't want to make friends. But I don't know. It just
here's I think the lesson. 15 and 19 is not your concern. Worry about the new guy at work. Worry about the guy who moved into your town that you went to high school with, or the college friend that doesn't have any friends and wants to crash your. Like, we've covered 1,000 of those emails already. Stay in your age lane. Do not feel guilt about this one. Okay, thanks to Kyle. Thanks to Van. So because you got Van, you got one email. We'll make it up to you. Thanks to Ceruti. Thanks to Wargon. And hope everybody had a good holiday week. We will be in Denver. Bill and I are going to be doing Bill's show in Denver on Wednesday night. So we get some Nuggets Warriors tomorrow night. That means no Wednesday pod for me, but I'll be back on Friday. All right. We'll talk to you then. Please subscribe. Ryen Russillo Podcast, Ringer, Spotify.